Hey YouTube, it's Justin, aka Demonic Sweaters, here with a little Audacity, well, sort of a tutorial, kind of like a commentary or something. Yeah, I've got my quarantine mustache going on here, and hopefully you guys are all staying safe out there, and everybody's keeping busy. I'm going to try to keep making some videos, just to give some, something for you guys to watch, as well as something for me to do so I don't go completely insane. But anyway, so what today's video is going to be about is actually, a lot of my most popular videos are about Audacity, because it is a very popular program. And I would say the majority of Audacity users are using Windows as their operating system on their PC. Now, unlike a lot of Linux users, I do not hate Windows. I actually like Windows 10. I have another computer that I run Windows on. It's kind of like my gaming computer, even though I can play games on this computer as well. But I use both. However, that being said, there is something very good that could be said about using Audacity on Linux as opposed to Windows. There are quite a bit of advantages, and I wanted to share with you some of those advantages to kind of just give you an idea of what it's like if you don't use Linux, and if you already use Audacity, why maybe you should consider trying Linux, because of some of these features you'll get out of Audacity that you really can't do in Linux at all. So let's go ahead and get started, or in Windows at all, rather. So let's go ahead and get started and just talk about some of these things. The first one that I wanted to mention, let me just make this a little smaller. The first one that I wanted to mention here, well, actually, let's go ahead and look at the version of Audacity I'm using, which is 2.2.1. Right now, which is the most current version in this version of Linux. I think the Windows version might be like a point higher, possibly, but it doesn't really matter. It's still just as fully featured as the most current version. I could be wrong, and maybe this is the most current version. I haven't checked, but it's recent, as of late March 2020. So one of the first things that I wanted to mention here is, in Linux, you have the option to use a high-end, low-latency audio driver, being the Jack Audio Connection Kit, which is all this stuff you see back here running in the background. Now, I know this looks a bit complicated if you've never seen anything like this, and, well, it can be, but if you basically look at it like you're hooking up a stereo with some audio cables, then it makes it pretty easy to figure out what's going on. And I'll explain more of this here in a second, but first, I want to talk about why it's good to be able to use the Jack driver as opposed to just your regular ALSA driver, which is your standard audio driver for Linux. Or in Windows, you basically only have the options to use the Windows drivers, the MME. You do not have the ability to use ASIO, which is a low latency audio driver in Windows. Now, what that means is you're always going to have quite a bit of a delay when you go to record something as to when it gets recorded on the actual program in Audacity if you're using the built-in Windows driver. Now, most of the time this isn't going to cause a problem as long as you're not trying to monitor your audio through the software as you're recording it. 99% of the users won't have an issue with this. However, if you're trying to record things and have the best performance, like most professional digital audio workstations are going to use something like ASIO for their drivers, and in Linux, the equivalent of that is the Jack Audio Connection Kit. And in Linux, you can use the low latency drivers for Audacity. Now, in addition to having this option, what really makes that important is if we go in here to if we just look right here, actually, if we go to this drop-down menu where we have our inputs, in Windows, you will never see more than 2 right here. You will only see mono recording channels and 2 stereo recording channels. Now, you'll notice on mine, it's going up to 4 right now, and that's because my audio interface, which you can see right here, I have a USB audio interface that actually has 4 XLR inputs on it. In the Jack Audio Connection Kit, you can see, well, actually it's right here, you can see all 4 capture inputs listed. And then as long as you're using Jack as your audio driver, Audacity will recognize all 4 of those. So what this means is you can record 4 different mics, or if you have an audio interface with 8, you could record up to 8 different mics simultaneously within Audacity. You cannot do this in Windows. Windows, you can only do that if you're using some sort of professional DAW like Reaper or Pro Tools or Cubase or something like that. But if you're using Audacity in Linux, you have this ability. Okay, so that is really important, and I think it's actually one of the major reasons why you should consider using Linux if you're using Audacity as a production tool or something that you want to get more serious about. And another really, really good advantage to that is all this stuff is free in Linux. You don't have to pay for anything. It's not pirated or anything like that. It's all free, freely available. The version of Linux that I'm using right here is actually called Elementary OS. It's a really, really good Linux distribution. Linux distributions are basically all these different kind of like brand names of Linux, for a lack of better word, but they're all running on the basic core principles of Linux, or core kernel, rather, operating system kernel, with basically a different skin on the front of them. And you'll notice Elementary OS looks quite a bit like Mac OS, which I really like. Visually, I think it's very pleasing. Now, Elementary OS is also free. They kind of want a donation. I actually sponsor them on Patreon because I really, really love the work that they do. Not to go off on a tangent here on Elementary OS, but if you're looking for a great place to start on Linux, if you've never used it before, I highly recommend trying Elementary OS as opposed to something like Ubuntu or Debian or anything like that. Ubuntu is actually a really, really good second choice, I think, but it's still not as quite as well put together, in my opinion, as Elementary is. But anyway, whatever you decide to go with, your options for free versions, free operating systems are really pretty endless when it comes to Linux. But let's get back to the point of this video, which was why I think you should be using Linux for using Audacity. Now, my other point that I wanted to make, or I have several more actually, let me look at my notes here. I already talked about the latency and the true multi-channel support, which is being able to have 4 different inputs at the same time. Another thing that you could do here, which you can't do in Windows, is having the ability to be able to use real-time effects. Now, when I say real-time effects, it's not actually within Audacity, but the way that the Jack Audio Connection Kit driver works within Linux is kind of like a patch bay of all these different softwares on your computer, and you can route them to and from one another. So just to give it an example here, what I could do is I can open up something called Jack Rack, which is this basically external program that allows you to load plugins, audio plugins in. If I go here and I open up just some, let me just put something in here. Let's go to a compressor. SC3 is actually a compressor that is available for Linux. And so we have this compressor loaded in here. And now what I could do is I could actually run, let me just open up an audio file here. I don't even know what this is. Something I recorded and then forgot about. I should listen to it, and maybe it's something I want to make into a song. But anyway, so say we have this. Now let's go ahead and pause it. Play and pause. And then we can see now in my Jack Audio Connection Kit here that I have somewhere in here, let me find it. Port audio is what Audacity gets listed as for its audio output name and input name within Jack. It just says port audio. It doesn't say Audacity. But once you know that, you know where to find it. So, and if we see here Jack Rack, that's actually the MIDI control, but somewhere there's an audio input for Jack Rack. Where is it? Oh, right here. So what we could do now is we could actually run out of our port audio output into Jack Rack. And then we can actually run our Jack Rack output back into our system playback so we can hear what the affected version of this sound sounds like. And then we could add more effects to here if we wanted to. So there we have real-time effects happening in Audacity, which you cannot do this in Windows. There's absolutely no way to do this in Windows, and we're not hurting or changing our file here in Audacity whatsoever. Now, say we wanted to record this or bounce it down rather to get what we're hearing on tape or on recording. Let's go ahead and pause it, because one thing about Audacity, it's a little funny, is if you press stop, it disconnects everything in Jack, so you have to make your connections again. But if you press pause, that doesn't happen. But if we want to record this, we could either record it in another instance of Audacity, or what we could do is use a little program that I really like a lot called Jack Time Machine, or just Time Machine. And to open that up, let's go ahead and just search Time Machine right here, Jack Time Machine. And all this is basically like a record button. And so what we could do is we can go to our jack rack output right here, and then find our Time Machine input. It's here somewhere. There it is. And then let's just run out from here like that. And then we press record here. And now if we unpause, it'll record that right there. Now, I did something a little strange where I think this one, this SC3 is a mono plugin, so that's why we're only getting a single input there. However, you get the point. All that it enables us to do is be able to use real-time effects within Audacity, which you can't do in Windows. So that's another really good reason to use Audacity within Linux as opposed to Windows. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention that I think is really important, let's go ahead and close all of these, is say you have a internet stream or something that you wanted to record in Audacity. Now this is, it's probably possible in Windows, but it's probably a lot more difficult than it is within Linux. So if we just open up a browser, let's just go to YouTube here. And say, let's just open up this. I don't want to get a copyright claim, so I'm going to pause it. But what we could do using something called the Jack Pulse Audio Connection Kit, or Pulse Audio Module, rather, what we could do is we can actually record from any sound source within Linux running on our desktop, and we can actually record that into Audacity using this Pulse Audio Jack connection, which you see here. We have Jack Sync. So if I just run that out, well, first off, what I'd have to do is get Audacity in a state ready to record. So let's just press pause and then record. And now that gives us our Jack inputs. And you can already see my mic right there as well. But what we could do at this point is actually disconnect our audio inputs right here. We can disconnect those. And then we can go from our Jack Sync and just plug that directly into here. And let me make sure my audio is going through my Jack Sync from Chrome. Oh, and here's another one, Skype. We can actually use Skype that way as well. But playback, oh, okay, I guess I have to press play on here for it to show up. So Chromium, let's go ahead and put Jack Sync, press play here.
Maybe if you're really hip, you'll think of the Kentucky Fried Movie, but smack dab in the middle of Airplane and The Naked Gun,
now, as you can
there
see,
was
I'm
Top
recording
Secret,
directly from
which is an
YouTube
underrated cult
Audacity.
classic of their canon that counts folks like Weird Al Yankovic among its diehard fans, and introduced.
You could do this in basically any program within Linux. You can route it directly into Audacity and record anything you want. And this actually comes in very handy if you're using something like Skype or any kind of voice chat. that you don't have the ability to record directly out of the program. Regardless of whatever you're using, like I said, you can record it within Audacity in Linux. And this is actually a really, really nice feature and something that you can't do within Windows. So just wanted to bring that up. Now, the last final point I wanted to make is within Linux, there are way more plugin options available for, well, I wouldn't want to say way more, because if you're using VSTs in Windows, you have a lot of options. However, there are so many that are just easier to install for Audacity and Linux. Now, if we go in here and look at all the plugins I have, you will see just a ridiculous amount of audio plugins, 320 to be exact, and all of these are 100% free, and I found them all within the Linux repositories. Now, if you don't know what that means, this is basically what the Linux software repositories are, where all of the programs for Linux are basically stored, and they're listed in a database, basically command line tools for Linux, as well as some graphical interfaces where you can install programs as well. So all of this combined, I think, makes Audacity a way, way more powerful program if you're using the Linux operating system. I use it for a lot of things. It's such a Swiss Army knife for audio. You can do batch audio conversion. You can record podcasts. I think it's the absolute best thing for recording podcasts. You can record Skype. You can record radio streams. You can do like really good editing. I've recorded actual music, done songs in it, produced music. It's really, really powerful, and there's a lot of stuff you could do. I love it for mastering, and all of these things are even more powerful when you're using Linux. Now, again, is this for everybody? I'm not really sure, probably not, because it may be a little bit too nerdy and a little bit too much technical stuff going on for some users out there that are not interested in doing that stuff. They just want it to work. But if you aren't afraid to tinker a little bit, and right now, believe me, we all have the time to mess around with stuff. So if you've never tried Linux before, right now might be a great time to try it. Just go and search through some of the videos. I have a whole Linux-related playlist. I'll post a link down to that down below, where you can watch all of my Linux videos. And it's just a really, really cool operating system. Does a lot of stuff, and you have a lot of things that you could play with for free. So we're all stuck at home right now, or most of us are stuck at home. Might as well try installing Linux. Make a partition on your computer, install it on there, or if you have an old computer laying around and you want to try it on there, you can. This computer I'm running it on, this is the one that I found in the trash probably about a year ago. I made a whole video series on that, of me updating this computer and getting it to run and everything. But I just wanted to do this video. It was something I was thinking about, just how different it is, with Audacity on Linux versus Windows. And I have a lot of comments, on some of my Audacity tutorials where I'm showing how to record multiple tracks at the same time, but I'm using Linux. And so a lot of people, I didn't even realize at first that Windows couldn't do that until I started seeing the comments on my videos, where I was like recording drums with like 4 channels at once. And I didn't even really realize that you couldn't do it in Windows until I went back and I checked, and I'm like, oh, wow, that kind of stinks. But anyway, really cool stuff. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. Click the thumbs up, and hope you're all staying safe out there. And let's just try to remain calm. Everything's going to work out. Just have to stay patient and calm, and we'll make it through this together. All right, see y'all really soon.